Good evening on this Wednesday, September 14th. This is a brief update on the tropics from 28storms.com. The emphasis this evening continues to be on Tropical Storm Maria as it inches closer to Bermuda, and we also have a newly outlined tropical wave here by the Hurricane Center. As of the 8 p.m. tropical weather outlook, they give this a 10% chance of forming to the south of the Cape Verde Islands within the next 48 hours. But first off, Maria is definitely a little bit stronger today. Maximum sustained winds have increased to 65 miles per hour. Luckily, the forward motion has increased. It's now moving toward the north-northeast at 17 miles per hour. And of course, we still have those tropical storm warnings in effect, even though the center is going to pass just to the west. This is the latest look at the tropical storm force winds and how far they extend. As you can see, much of those winds are confined to the northeast quadrant, so as the center begins to shift more toward the northeast, it is very feasible for that tropical storm wind area to begin impacting Bermuda. And this is just a quick look at some of the more recent model tracks. Obviously, they are going to be in fairly good agreement since this storm is only about 24 hours from its closest approach to the island. On the latest satellite, we can see that much of the Gulf, Caribbean, and even Central Atlantic are clear. The one exception continues to be Maria, which does appear to be slowly getting its act together a little bit more than what we saw about 24 to 36 hours ago. It looks like the low-level surface circulation is moving just a little bit closer to some of those deeper cloud tops that we are seeing on infrared, and the official intensity forecast has been increased ever so gradually. They are now forecasting a maximum intensity of 70 miles per hour, which is just below Category 1 hurricane status. It still looks as though it's going to remain a tropical storm, and that is because if we go ahead and look at the latest water vapor, we still see that there is quite a lot of southerly and southwest wind shear out ahead of the trough that's over the western Atlantic at this point, and that wind shear should continue throughout the remainder of Maria's life cycle. Now, if we turn and quickly look at the eastern Atlantic satellite, we can see that there is a fairly healthy tropical wave beginning to exit the coast of Africa tonight. However, even if this system were to develop, it looks as though this is going to quickly turn more toward the northwest and eventually out to sea. And that idea is supported by nearly all model guidance. We'll start off with the 12Z Canadian CMC model, and you can see that the tropical wave is correctly initialized near the coast of Africa. And as we go from the current hour through day 6, we see that the model is trying to steadily develop this into what could be the next named storm of the season, but it's obviously turning north into a weakness in the ridge, so that system is likely to be no threat to land. Elsewhere, we're looking pretty clear. It is developing a vorticity max to the southeast of Jamaica, however that's fairly weak so far, and that is at day 6. Switching over to the 18Z run of the GFS model, it's also showing that the tropics are going to be fairly quiet throughout the next 168 hours or 7 days. It does take a weak area of low pressure into Nicaragua by day 7. That could be something to monitor, but it's really not overly strong either. And the model, much like the CMC, is showing a series of tropical waves exiting the coast of Africa, but it's not developing any particular wave, and it's also keeping them rather far away from the Caribbean. And as we get later into the month, like I said a couple days ago, it is going to be steadily more difficult for these tropical systems to make it all the way across the Atlantic Basin, but that's not to say it can't happen. So with all of that in mind, we're going to begin emphasizing the potential for central and western Caribbean development, and this potential extends into the southeast Gulf of Mexico and lower Bahamas. And this is strictly because, based on climatology, as we go into the month of October, those are the more climatologically favored areas for tropical weather, or tropical cyclone development, I should say. Now, thankfully, there are no indications that this is about to happen anytime soon. As we saw with the CMC and GFS models, neither one of those are showing any development within the next 5 to 7 days. And I'm going to go ahead and finalize or sum up the video with the 12Z European model. And thankfully, it is very similar to the CMC and GFS. This is now through day 4, and there's really no indication of any tropical cyclone development throughout the entire basin. So we're looking fairly good for at least the next 4 to now 5 days. And really the same can be said all the way through day 10 if you take this model verbatim. This is now day 7, 8, day 9, and then even by day 10, if anything, we see a weak tropical wave passing just to the north of the Leeward Islands, but it only has a broad 1014 millibar low associated with it. And this model is advertising the possibility for some tropical storm formation to the northwest of the Cape Verde Islands, but this is by day 10, and any storm that forms this far to the east and north this time of the year is very likely to recurve and be no threat to land. So I am nearly certain that we're not done with the tropical storms and hurricanes for the remainder of hurricane season 2011. We still have a long ways to go. Keep in mind that the climatological peak was only 3 days ago on September 11th, so there is still quite a lot of time for tropical systems to be a threat to land, and hopefully everyone is enjoying the lull, and we can only hope that this continues all the way through November when the threat decreases for good. But in the meantime, we'll go ahead and continue to monitor the tropics for you guys here at 28storms.com and the Hurricane Tracker app available on iPhone and iPad on a daily basis throughout the remainder of the season. So thanks again for stopping by, and have a good evening.